I guess we can just kind of go around in a circle and just ask questions.
I've got maybe, I don't know, 20 emails right now just sitting in my inbox of all these little paperwork and things that I don't want to even like worry about, but I got to get to that.
Should we do one person? Like, should we do one person at once or just all go up? You know what I mean? Okay, so who wants to start? Growing up, my parents both owned businesses. My mom owned a daycare center, and my dad owned a small landscaping company. So I kind of always knew I wanted to work with kids somehow, but I knew I didn't really exactly want to own a business. I wanted kind of more security, so I went into teaching. I just had a love for little kids, so I teach special ed now for kindergarten and first grade.
My dad's actually retired just like a couple of years ago as a music teacher. And so I grew up with my dad being a music teacher. My mom was a nurse. And that I just sort of followed that same pathway. I took a little career detour for 9 years as a church musician, but then eventually made my way back to music teaching, which is what I do now. So
I work in radio now. That wasn't always the case. My first stint at college wasn't the right move, I guess I would say. I went to college back in the mid '90s, and I wasn't enjoying myself, so I dropped out and joined the military. And then after I got out of the Navy, I went into customer service, and I worked my way up into management. And then they began to kind of lay people off and kind of make the workplace smaller. So I decided to go back and pursue what I wanted to in the first place, which I did go to school initially for theater and radio. So I just decided to go back into it. So I graduated, got a job at iHeartMedia. So I do production. I'm also an audio talent, and this is my dream job. This is what I wanted to do forever. So I'm happy now.
So I wake up, I get to work. I get there at 8 a.m. I'm with kindergarten for the first hour of the day, and I'm kind of just back and forth all day. Then I go to first grade for an hour for reading, and then I have lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I run back to first grade for a half hour, and then back to kindergarten for another hour, and then I have my prep, and I run back to first grade, and it's kind of just back and forth, a lot of going back and forth all day between the grades.
Yeah, I get to school at about 7:30, and kids come, shortly after that. I got high school chorus at 7:45 in the morning. I was just joking about that with them this morning because they were really sleepy. So I started, started doing some yoga, some movement, something to like get their blood flowing that early so they could start singing. And I do that in the first period, and throughout the day I'll have planning periods. I'll have actually voice, students come in for voice lessons and group lessons. Where I prepare them for, various assortment of performances throughout the year, New York State Solo Fest competitions, that sort of thing. And then throughout the day, I've got a guitar, piano, music theory class. I've got a music appreciation class, and then a few middle school choirs.
There's two aspects of my job. Again, I do stuff on air, and I'm also a producer. So the on-air stuff I do during the week. So Mondays, I usually do prep work for the show that I have air on Monday afternoon and also on Thursday. The show's called Inside the Margins. It's a show about marginalized groups and subject matter that's important to those groups. And so that I have that show air on two different radio stations. Tuesday and Thursday, I actually work at 89.1 The Point, the college radio station.
Oh, wow.
And I do a radio shift there Usually my shift's from about 9 in the morning till noon or so, and I also do a couple office hours, so I'm usually there till about 1.
Wow.
And then I have Friday off, and then I actually produce for Wham 1180 on Saturday and Sunday. So all the weekend shows that are on those from about 5 in the morning till about 1, I'm in charge of doing production for. So that's pretty much
Nice.
that's my week. Oh, of course, there's the homework and the school that we're doing and all this stuff too. So.
Obviously, I grew up, all the jobs I ever had were working with children. My mom had a daycare starting at 16. I did that. So what I do like about my job is the ability to work with students and like change their lives. I work in a low income district. A lot of my kids live in poverty. So I like to know that I'm making an impact in their lives. It's nice to go be out in public and see them run up to me and hug me. So that aspect I really do enjoy about my job. And just, you know, when a student finally, you're teaching them something and then they finally get it, it's like, yes, I did something right. Some things I don't dislike is, you know, all the paperwork that comes with teaching. I'm a special ed teacher now, so it's like you have to, you know all the laws, and it's like there's not enough time in a day to cover what you need to cover, and then with all the paperwork that goes along with it, all the meetings that have during the school day that take away from instructional time. I mean, when I was in college, a lot of people told me, like, are you sure you want to get into that? Like, teaching's changing. I guess it really has. I'm still a new teacher, but some days I'm just like so overwhelmed with all the back end stuff, not with the students. It's the students. It's really never the students. It's the back end of the stuff, the paperwork that really ends up stressing me out. And then I take that load home, you know. So those are some things, you know, constantly coming home and feeling like I have homework from school.
Totally relate to like everything you said. I feel like I've got, you know, as far as dislikes go, I feel like I've got maybe, I don't know, 20 emails right now just sitting in my inbox of all these little paperwork and things that I don't want to even like worry about, but I got to get to that. But yeah, anytime that I can make music with kids, and there's, you know, especially when, you know, sort of as you said, Shannon, you see sort of a spark in their eye or something that connects and they understand something they didn't before. It's just an incredible thrill, excitement. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, I remember last year I had the opportunity to direct the High School Musical, and so in one day, there's so many things I enjoy and get a thrill from, and at the same time, you know, being in school super late and being exhausted, and then having to wake up the next morning to do another, you know, 7:30 a.m. rehearsal sometimes is a bit of a drag, but it's that sort of both like and dislike at the same time, you know, like you push yourself through because you just love it, but it's also like when it's crunch week, when it's that tech week, when it's performance week, it's like forget about looking at any other part of your life. So
yeah, I've always loved radio. I always say, I think for most people, music is a soundtrack of your life, right? You could, if you hear a song on the radio, especially if it's something like from your past, it'll transport you back into that time, and you have memories that are associated with that song. So I've always been, that's always been intriguing to me. So I love that, and I love when I get a chance to play that kind of music or have that kind of impact on somebody. What's tough is that the producer role can be very tough because it's not my own show, they're not my own concepts. I'm producing other people's shows, and some people, the shows on Wham, especially, and on the weekends, I call those the infomercial shows. And the reason why I do is because the weekend Wham shows, the people who are on there, they usually pay to be on air. So they're promoting their business by being on air, and they'll take calls and answer questions, but it really is an hour, 2 hour long promotion for their show. So they're not really radio professional. So it's more about their business, and that's not really, that takes kind of the fun of being a radio out when it's more of it's my business. I'm trying to make money, so produce for my finances versus just for the love of doing radio.
Question. I feel like some days I'm just so mentally drained. I'm like, why did I choose this? See, like, you know, my friends, you know, when their work day's done, it's done. They leave work and they're in their own space. Whereas I feel like teaching, it's not that kind of job. You always come home either with lesson plans or, you know, with the burden of something that happened with one of your kids that day, that might have upset you and you're just worried about them. But if I were to choose it all over again, I would still do it. I know my passion is working with children. So helping children in any way. And I think I like teaching. I enjoy it. I have good connections with all my students. So I can't really imagine myself doing anything else.
My experience was I started teaching music for just a couple of years, left to be, you know, that church musician, which really was just became a professional musician, you know, planning services, but also other events where, you know, just every week there was another show coming up, basically another event, another service. And that job was incredible, but it was also incredibly exhausting, and it really did become my entire life for that season. And I moved back to teaching actually to try to have a little bit more of a family life. My kids are getting older, that sort of thing. And while yes, I still experience that, I take things home with me. I've got more work to do. It was not like the sort of, you know, there was always that high pressure performance coming up. And with school, it's a little bit of a span there where there's a little bit more busy seasons and then less busy seasons. So yeah, I did have the chance to do it all over again, which I'm really grateful for. Not everybody has that opportunity, and going, you know, back to school to make sure I get that permanent certification is something that I really appreciate. My family, you know, was able to deal with that, you know, while I'm back in school, which I'm really grateful for. So
I guess I would say is if it was up to me, I would have done this in the first place. I wouldn't have taken so long to get back to doing this. My focus wasn't correct the first time around, so I'm definitely better at what I do now than I think what I would have been then. However, if I would have started earlier, I could have been doing this much longer. And I think it's important to do something that you love doing for a living versus something that you do just for a paycheck. And most people in radio will tell you you don't get rich doing radio. You definitely don't get rich doing radio. But I have a passion for it. I love doing it. I'm happy doing what I do now.
As I've gained more seniority, I've been treated better by my coworkers. You know, my first year was I was the newbie. I was 23. I was fresh out of college. So it was like you kind of have to prove yourself. You know, nobody really knew anything about me. They didn't know how I got the job. So it's like kind of just proving that you are a good teacher and you are capable, not only to your coworkers, but also to parents. I was 23 and I'm telling these people who have children that are older than me, you know, how their child's doing. And it's kind of like I felt like they didn't want to listen to me. It was hard for them to listen to me because they knew I was a first year teacher, but I feel as I've gained experience, I've gained more trust and from both parents and coworkers.
That first year is always just, you know, developing trust and, you know, making mistakes and going, oh man, you know, and just trying to get better quickly. Thankfully, I had some really, really great people. I know the teachers in New York State have, you know, these mentor, you know, that you're assigned a mentor teacher, which my mentor teacher ended up being really helpful. So yeah, I think overall I'm treated well, and it's just like you said, Shannon, sort of every year you sort of try to build more trust and more rapport with the people you work with. Yeah, I can't think of being treated poorly at all, other than, you know, if people are upset, you know, if a parent is upset about what's happening in the classroom or something like that, and usually there's a learning experience there for me too. So I don't want to say like, oh, this parent was wrong or something. Just sometimes there's just things to think through, and there's better strategies to use. So
I think I'm treated well. I think just like almost any job, when you're new, you have to prove yourself pretty much. I think I don't think whether you're a teacher or radio or whatever. I think when you first get in there, there's not really a bar for you yet, and they want to see what you're going to do, and you have to kind of show them what you can do. So, but I know when I was hired at iHeart, I was told it's not. When you first get here, you're going to mess up. Everyone's going to, because you're using equipment and you're doing stuff that you've never done, and you're working on shows that you've never worked on before. So you're going to make a mistake. So no one's going to be mad that you make a mistake. It's all about how you recover after you make that mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, do you let it get to you? Does it mess you up? Are you throwing off your game for the rest of the day after that, or can you be like, all right, now I know not to do that, and let me move on and keep it going. So
Yeah.
I think if you can do that, you get respect, and then that's how you continue to move forward. So I'm treated pretty well because I haven't quit on anybody yet, and that I guess that's a good thing.
Everybody knows you're not going to get rich going to teaching.
Nope, we're all poor.
Like obviously that's a perception everyone has. Another perception I feel is a lot of people, like for elementary teachers, they're like, oh, you're just the content is easy, yes, but you're teaching them to be humans and how to act socially acceptable. So though you might think it's easy, the content, first of all, finding ways to teach it is hard. But my friend who just became a second grade teacher, and that's what I did for 2 years, actually texted me last night, and she goes, I never drank so much wine by myself and a second grade teacher, and I couldn't relate more because it's just like a perception. People think that it's an easy job, I feel like, and it's really, it's not. And just like every job, you think something, if you're not in that field, you don't really have the right to reserve judgments.
Yeah, I think people perceive the music teacher sometimes, especially that extra elective class guy, and it's, oh, he's just having fun. I don't know. I really haven't heard that right from people's mouths, but every so often, if it's a struggle with a teacher of scheduling or whatever, and it's like, I'm talking with the math teacher, I think the math teacher thinks, yeah, I'm gonna win this argument because it's math, and I think there's a reality to that, especially what New York State and the federal government values, and I'm not here to try to debate that or argue that, but I think there, with music and art and phys ed or whatever, like I think those can be sometimes sort of lowered in value sometimes, but either way, how does it influence my actions? I try to communicate and make sure that people know, here's what we're doing, and it's serious. It's not, we're not just, it's not all fun, although music is fun, so I can't lie about that, but, anyway. So anyway.
Music is fun. You said it. I can't lie and say that my job is not a fun job, because it is. It is. I mean, there's obviously stressful aspects. I think the perception is because even though it's radio, it's still kind of a show business job. So people assume that we're, oh my God, you work in radio, you must be paid, you must be making tons of money.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We're not making much money at all. It doesn't really influence my actions at all. I live my life the way I live. I don't try to pretend that I'm rich because they think I'm rich. So I'm buying it because it's, unless you're like Ryan Seacrest or somebody like that, if you work just for your local city's radio station, and I'm not in New York City and I'm not in Hollywood, I'm in Rochester, New York, I'm not going to be a rich radio personality in Rochester, New York. So even your best well-known personalities who probably make a decent living are probably not as rich as you think they are. And so, you're like, oh man, this guy who I hear him every morning, he's got to be a millionaire. No, not even close.